Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the 21 Boom Guided Meditation series. I'm your host, Coach Zach Feeney, and I'll be your guide. The topic today is mindfulness of the mind. And as an introduction to the topic, I'd like to tell you a story, a fable from the time of the Buddha, from the traditional Indian and Buddhist worldview, cosmology or mythology. There's a god named Brahma, one of the great gods from the heavenly realm, who rules over his heavenly realm. One day there was a yaksha, which is kind of like a mischievous tree spirit, an ugly runt of yaksha, like an ugly little run of a troll, came and sat on Brahma's throne. This is a great god in the Indian pantheon. There is no greater god. He's a pretty big figure up there. And he went and sat on Brahma's throne one day when he was away on his travels. Now, all the other gods who were around about the heavenly courts thought this is wrong. This ugly little runt of a yaksha shouldn't be sitting on the great Brahma's throne. So they got kind of angry and they said, "You have to get off that throne." As they said that, he started growing bigger and bigger. And they got even more angry, and he wouldn't budge. And they yelled louder and told him to get down. "Who are you to sit up there?" And as they continued with their ranting and raving and fury at him sitting where he shouldn't be, he kept getting bigger and bigger and more beautiful until he was a beautiful great yaksha. So these court gods were confused and went to Brahma and asked what they should do. They told Brahma that this little runt of a yaksha climbed up and was sitting on his throne, and he won't get down. He won't get off. Not only that, but he keeps getting bigger and more beautiful. And Brahma said, "Oh, I know what to do." And he went back and stood in front of his own throne, and he bowed deeply to the yaksha and said, "So nice to see you. I hope you're comfortable up there, and you should come visit more often, my dear friend." And as he said that, the yaksha got smaller and smaller until finally he went poof and disappeared. At that, Brahma went up and sat on his own throne. And he said to his court that yaksha, that tree spirit, is an anger-eating yaksha. The more angry you get, the bigger it gets. So what you have to do is bring your kindness to it. And then it goes away. It feeds on your anger. What you have to do is bring kindness to it, and it dissolves away. So do you have your own anger-eating yaksha? What do you feed? And what gets bigger and more beautiful as you get angry? This fable points to the idea of our relationship to our experience. How we relate to our experience has a big impact on ourselves. So if you get angry with someone, if you get angry enough, you don't become beautiful. You might get big in your fury, but generally it's understood that when people get really angry, they get ugly. Anger isn't a beauty treatment. It's something inside of us. It doesn't just feed our physicality. It conditions our mind and our hearts and how we relate to the world. If you get angry a lot, it can color everyone you see and everything you touch. You can be angry with one person, but it fills you with a mood of anger. And then when you go walking down the street, everyone irritates you. How could they walk that way? They're stepping on too many cracks. It gets ridiculous sometimes because we are so irritated. So we're feeding not only how we are in the moment, but sometimes we're feeding a habit and that habit develops over time. There are other habits or states to feed. So if you're kind, if that's your disposition, your default, if you're feeling relaxed and generous, then as you go down the street, that attitude affects how you see people and how you see yourself. So not only can you be kind or loving in the moments to a particular person, but it also affects your mood and how you are. And how you are affects how you see the world around you. And it also affects the habits that get formed, how you condition your mind. There's an emphasis on taking responsibility not only for your choices in the moments, but also for how those choices shape your overall state of being, your state of mind, your mood, your overall attitude that you have about your life as you go through it. Not only the overall mood for the day or the hour, but also the predisposition you have to fall back into certain states of that or attitudes of mind. So if you develop a habit of going around being angry, then you're more likely to fall into that groove at some other time. If you're always being afraid or anxious, you may not only be anxious about a particular thing, but it could affect your overall attitude towards everything, not just in that moment or hour. Right now, my impression is that in the last 2 weeks, there's a lot more anxiety in people. They may say that they are anxious about the economy or work, but it's spilling out and expressing itself in all kinds of other ways in their life. They may not even be sure what they're anxious about. It's just an underlying feeling of anxiety. So if you're anxious about a particular thing, it can affect your whole mood. But it also affects how we get shaped or conditioned for the future, how we tend to be more disposed to the habits that are being formed. So if you keep reinforcing that fear and living from there, you're more likely to fall into those patterns in the future as well. So mindfulness has a role in all three of these realms. Mindfulness has a role by putting us in the present moment and being relaxed enough, calm enough in the present moment to see the impulses that arise in us, to see the motivations, to see what we want to say, what we want to do, what we want to think, to track it enough and to be present enough to say, wait a minute, I don't have to act on that. I have a choice here. If we don't slow down enough and have strong enough mindfulness, we don't see that we have any choice. So you're walking down the street and you walk by an ice cream parlor, and the next thing you know, you're holding an ice cream cone in your hand. Where was the choice? All I knew is that I was just walking down the street and that I had this ice cream. I didn't choose that. Of course, you chose it, but maybe there wasn't enough mindfulness, but the powers of desire were so strong that they took over. And you were in a kind of trance when that happened. It can happen much more clearly with anger. People can say things very spontaneously in anger that they would never do if they were in their right mind and thought about it. But they are so worked up, so triggered that it comes out of their mouths, or even sometimes comes out of their hand as they hit someone. So in that kind of situation, you don't see choice. There's a phenomenal amount of people in society that don't see their places of choice. If you don't see where you have choice, then you have no choice. If you see the place of choice, you have choice. Mindfulness practice expands the range of places that you have choice, where you can choose in your life. So it's not such a mystery why you have that ice cream cone or why something happens to you. Mindfulness helps to put you into a place of choice, and that helps you with wiser choices in the present moment. As you choose to behave, act, and even think in different ways, it can have an effect on your overall mood and attitude with which you approach your life. As you begin exercising that choice, it also can have a profound effect on how you condition yourself, how you predispose yourself as you go forward in your life into the future. So mindfulness has effects on all of these. For today, the topic is called mindfulness of mind. Maybe in English, we would say mindfulness of attitude or overall mood or the overall state that we are in. I'm sorry I'm picking on anger so much today. It may be irritating to you that I'm using it as an example. If you're walking down the street and you see someone walking towards you that's really angry, you can almost see the steam coming from them and feel the mood or grumpiness from afar. Or if you see someone who is really carefree, happy, and delighted, you can feel that mood or atmosphere of that person. You sense how they are. So the mindfulness of the mind has to do with the overall mood or attitude with which we go through life. But that attitude that we have can also be invisible to us because it's so much a part and parcel of the atmosphere that we're in. For example, fish can't see the water that it's swimming in. It's like a dirty windshield. You're so focused on driving in the road that you don't notice. You not only don't notice that you can't see very clearly because it's so dirty, but you also don't notice the strain that it has on your eyes and mind to try to see through the dusty windshield. So the attitude can be that way. You don't notice the effect it has on you, on how you perceive the world around you. The last thing I'll say about this before we meditate is to give an analogy. It's the nature of being a human being that human beings have problems. So do any of you not have any problems? Problems come along. You have one problem, then another problem. Right now, I can have a car problem. Hopefully next week it won't be there. But then I'm sure I'll have another problem. Something else will come along, some difficulties, something that I'll have to take care of. If we labeled our problems with the letter X, like in mathematics, equations may contain a variable X, which can represent any number. What can fill that space of X can change a lot, but the attitude or relationship that you have towards your problems can't be can be constant. Some people have common default attitudes every time there's a problem. Oh boy, not again. This is impossible. Or I'm not going to pay attention. I'm going to escape. Or I'm going to lash out and blame someone. Or I'm going to get depressed. Or this is too much. Or, oh boy, I love problems. I love solving. It's like a puzzle. They're great. So there's X that changes all the time. And what changes less often is how you might relate to various problems. It's easy to be blinded by the problems and not notice the relationship we have with the problems, the attitude we have towards these things. Some people will have underlying pervasive attitudes that they carry with them that affect everything that they touch. So this is the analogy. If a fly lands on an ant, it's probably a big deal for the ant. The fly is heavy, bigger than the ant. The ant can't move around easily and can't get into his hole because this big thing is stuck on it. And it's a big deal. If the same fly lands on an elephant, the elephant could not care less. When you have problems, are you more like the ant or more like the elephant? There are times when we are fragile, tense, vulnerable, or upset, etc. And the smallest little thing can push us over or do us in. We're like the ant. And other times when we are happy, contented, energetic, present, full, etc. If the same kind of things happen, you hardly notice. Problem, fly on my back. I guess there's a fly there, but maybe I don't have to do anything about it. So the attitude that we hold ourselves with, or how we feel about ourselves, or the mood or state that we are in, can have a big impact on how we relate to our world, how we relate to our problems, our blessings, the fortunate things that happen to us. It's a variable that can be adjusted and changed. The mood, state, or attitude, how we relate to things, how we are in relationship to all things is not fixed. One of the things that mindfulness can do is help us become mindful not only of the overall state that we're in, but also the choices that influence the state, mood, and situation we're in. Previously, we talked of mindfulness of thinking, one of the effects of being really preoccupied in thoughts and caught up in your thinking. If you notice the next time that you're really preoccupied, you probably feel something like a constricting of awareness, a tightening up of awareness, a narrowing of awareness, maybe even a darkening. If you feel the mind, it may feel as if it's darkening down. If you let go of your preoccupation, there can be a lightening, opening up feeling, an expansive feeling that goes on there. So the state of awareness can be contracted or expansive. You can be aware of whether it's contracted or expansive. The state of the mind can have a big impact on the overall state of our mood. A very expansive sense of mind can give us an expansive sense of being. A contracted mind can give us a very contracted sense of being. If you have an expansive sense of being, you can be the elephant. If you have a contracted sense of being caught up in something, then you can be like the ant. So let's meditate. Take a comfortable, alert posture, gently closing your eyes. It's helpful in the beginning of a sitting to spend a little bit of time getting into your posture, maybe swaying back and forth, sideways, wiggling the spine, perhaps feeling how the weight of your body might move through the spine. Especially for those not using a backrest, maybe you can find a way to feel the way the weight of the body travels down the center of your spine. Because in that case, the spine can support the weight instead of the muscles holding you up. In the beginning of a sitting, it'd be helpful to take a few long, slow, deep breaths. As you breathe in deeply, feel the stretching of your rib cage, shoulders and belly, almost like a massage from the inside. As you exhale, just relax, let go, and settle in. Deep breath in, long breath out. And then letting your breath return to normal. Take a few moments to scan through your body to see if there are any obvious places of holding or tension that you can either relax, or if you can't relax and let go of the holding, perhaps there could be a softening around it, a lightening up around it. Then within your body, as part of your body, become aware of the body's experience of breathing, feeling how the body might expand and contract. Parts of the body lift and fall as you breathe, or the sensations of the air coming in and out through the nostrils. Letting go the best you can of your thoughts and concerns from the day in order to settle into the experience of breathing, as if the breathing is your home base. When you notice that you're drifting off in thoughts, just notice that. Be relaxed about it. Just notice that's happened, and be mindful of that. Then, without commentary or judgment, begin again with your breathing. Begin again being aware, breathing in and breathing out. As you're sitting here, what's your overall mood or state? What's the overall general state of being? There are many things you might notice like that. Are you tired or alert? Do you feel contracted or expanded? Calm or agitated? Fuzzy or clear, crisp? Anxious or relaxed? Interested or bored? Patient or impatient? being aware of this overall state, how does it affect you? How does it affect how you see what's going on and how you relate to it? How are you influenced by the state that you're in? As you're mindful of all this, can you shift your identity? Shift what you identify yourself with from your mood or your attitude to the mindfulness, the awareness that knows and recognizes the state you're in. Then shifting gears a little bit with whatever you're noticing now, with whatever is happening now. What is your attitude towards that? How are you relating? What is your relationship to what is happening with meditation for you or the situation you're in now, the thoughts you have, the feelings you have? What's the relationship or the attitude? Are you for it or against it? Are you liking it or not liking it? Are you enjoying it or are you resisting? Is there a wanting or not wanting? What's your attitude towards what's happening? It might even be your attitude to me giving you this question. Then can you shift your identity? Shift yourself from kind of being the attitude, believing the attitude, to being mindful of it. Can you step out away from it and watch it? Then taking a deep breath or two, return more fully to your breathing. For the last minutes of the sitting, just stay with your breathing as best you can, not letting yourself be swept away through your attitude, your mood, your state. Stay with your breathing. The atmosphere, the environment in which something exists can affect how we relate to something. So the same thing applies to ourselves. We can focus on the details of our lives, the details of our thoughts, our feelings, our body sensations, what's going on in our body. We can focus on our breathing itself. We can focus on the details, but the mindfulness of the mind is including within that an awareness of what the environment is in which these details are occurring. It's very easy for some people to get blinded by the details and not notice the overall atmosphere, the environment in which it occurs. So mindfulness of the mind has to do with this overall state that we are in. It can be very helpful to notice that because it has such a big influence in how we are, the choices we make, and how we think. If we can step out of it and we can notice, oh, look at that. I'm really feeling shaky today. I'm really vulnerable. Maybe something dramatic happened and I feel really vulnerable. Oh, I better take that into account. As opposed to not noticing the environment of vulnerability and then stumbling through and wondering why things are so hard. So ask what's going on here. Do we feel expansive, like an elephant, or do we feel tiny, small, and insignificant? I've known people who have been quite petite in their pettiness, petiteness. They were really big. Their persona, their sense of being was huge. I know people who were quite small or short as adults, and I actually didn't notice that they were short because somehow their presence was so big. Then I've known adults who were really tall and big, and they felt really small. They felt timid or something. There was a very small sense of self there. Again, it has to do with the environment that's there. It's a different feeling about what it's like to be alive and be ourselves. I want to say one more thing about this, but I'd like to. So in the meditation now, were you able to step back and get a sense of your overall mood, attitude, or state of being that you had? If so, what did you discover and what happened to you when you took that into account? When you could see that and be aware of it? It would be nice. Kind of look into that a little bit. Okay, so just for a moment, if you will, please close your eyes, just as you are. You don't have to change your posture. What would you say is your attitude right now? Doesn't have to be special or precise. What attitude is the one that's most operating for you right now? Then can you shift back and forth a few times between being the attitude, being in the attitude, believing the attitude on the one hand, and then shifting to stepping out of the attitude and being mindful and knowing it's there, being the watcher of it. If you can do this, notice how different it feels to be in the attitude, believing the attitude versus stepping back from it and just seeing it there. Okay, open your eyes. Were some of you able to shift back and forth between those two modes of being? Did that make sense for some of you? Can you tell us, or can you tell what you noticed? What I'm trying to convey today, mindfulness of the mind, attitude, mood, that might be there. It's a little bit hard to convey. So some of you might be confused by this, or it might not make a lot of sense. If that's the case, don't worry about it. To just do to go back a few weeks and work on the instructions there and coming back to your breath and being with your breath is enough for a year of meditation practice. Just doing that is very significant and helpful. Exploring that as you go forward for a while might actually be better than racing through. Or it might be better that just doing that is enough. It's simple. It's straightforward. Being aware of the breath and being aware of what's going on in the body, going back and forth, that's enough. So if you find this is getting too complicated, so if it's like that, just forget it all and go back just to your breathing. The breathing is the default. Stay with your breathing. Stay with your breathing. Until some of these other realms of experiences become so glaringly obvious that you go, I better pay attention to this. So if emotion becomes so clear that you can do what I'm talking about, but you don't have to be wondering, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Go back to your breath. Be with your breath. Trust your breath. It might be at some point as you go along that these instructions about the attitude or overall atmosphere or state of being is helpful because it becomes so glaringly present. One interesting place it becomes very present and is useful and important to notice is when your meditation gets really strong. Strong states of meditation primarily are characterized by very strong changes in our overall mood, atmosphere, attitude, state of mind, or state of being. Very radically different states of being than we normally would be walking down the street, going to work, and we say, wow, this is a whole different state of being I'm in. And we talked about the different state of being. Let me feel this. Then bring mindfulness and be attentive to that. Then it might be obvious and useful. So I'm laying out the instructions here, but you don't have to memorize it all or second guess where you're supposed to be. If it's not obvious, then be with the breath. Make sense? That way it's really simple. It's supposed to be simple. If it's not simple, it's not mindfulness. If you're saying, what should I do next? Am I supposed to be digging in here, stepping back and looking at it? Am I supposed to be feeling it? That's not simple. If you're making things that complicated, then very simply notice how complicated it's gotten and just go back to the breathing and be with the breath. So thank you very much.